Hello guys, so today I want to talk about a feature of event listeners that you might have not known before. So let's look at this React component that we have here. So we have a use effect hook here that listens to keep press events and resize events on the window and the document. So if you look at the browser preview here, if you resize the window height changes here, for example. And then if you type, the text on the screen changes because we are listening to the key press. So one thing about event listeners in React and in general is you have to be able to clear the event listeners. So you have to garbage collect them manually, right? So in React, in our use effect hook here, for example, we attach the event listeners, and then in our cleanup function here, we make sure that we remove the event listeners. So this is all good. But now, due to the limitation of how the event listeners API works, when you attach the event listener, you can't inline the function. You have to declare the function outside of the event listener itself, so that in your cleanup function, you reference the same function that you added when adding the event listener to the remove event listener. So the API will know exactly which event listener to remove. If you inline them, this won't work. So that becomes frustrating really quick because you have to repeat a lot of these boilerplate when adding and then removing event listener. So if I want to add another event listener here, say a mouse move event listener, I have to add it here. So document.add event listener. So say mouse move, and then we attach our on mouse move handler. So again, we go back and have to implement our mouse move event handler, and then we go back to the cleanup function, and then we add the remove event listener, the exact event listener that we were listening to, which was the mouse move event listener, and the callback handler we added. So you have to manually remove each of the event listeners and then manually. So this works, yes, but now you get a lot of duplication and doesn't look that good. But now, I just learned this week. You don't need to manually remove all the event listeners or declare the functions outside of the event listeners to be able to get this to work. So you can reduce this boilerplate by using abort signals. So this is what I mean. So we can declare an abort controller here. So controller is equals to new abort controller, and then we get the signal from the controller. So signal is equals to controller.signal, right? And then when we add the event listeners, we make sure that we add the abort signal as a third argument here. So for all event listeners, you can attach the abort signal like that. So what this means is that you can use a single abort signal to clean up all of these event listeners. So you don't need this code anymore here. What you just need is to call controller.abort, and all these event listeners will be aborted. So we can actually confirm that this works. So let's we can say make sure that let's just log the events here. So let's say on resize, and then here we can log console.log on key press, and then we can also log on mouse move here, just to confirm that our event listeners are cleaned up properly, right? So let's save this. So when you resize, you can see the resize event handler is called. When you type, you can see the key press event handler is called, and then when you move your mouse, you can see the mouse move event handler is called. So let's try to trigger the cleanup function here. Let's try to abort them. So the fastest way is to maybe change something in our code here so that the component reloads. So something like that. So if we look at our code here, we are still getting only one event listener is called. So that means it is properly cleaned up. So the resize event handler is still called, and then the type event handler is called. If we disable the controller.abort function here, you'll notice that if we edit the code here and the component refresh, you now get multiple event handlers being called instead of just one event handler. So that means our event handlers are not being cleaned up properly. If we clean them properly, the event handlers will be properly called and will be cleaned up properly. And also another thing with this method here, it frees us to be able to use inline event handlers, since you don't need to keep track of our event handler functions here. So we could, for example, move this event handler here into the component itself. And also we can move the key press event handler here into the component itself. So on key press, we just inline the function here because we don't need to keep track of it when removing the event handlers. And these will still work as expected. And the event handlers will be attached properly and they will be cleaned up properly. So this frees you a lot and you don't have to think about removing the event handlers. You can have even 10 event handlers and then only one signal that you can abort them using only one line of code, which is pretty cool. So I hope you learned something new about signals today. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video.